Hello friends and welcome to my new video. This video is actually a part 2 of the video that I did last Friday, and it's continuing to talk about the new Beatles documentary made by Peter Jackson. Now, on Friday I spoke about the first episode, and ever since that, the final two episodes have been telecast, which brings the documentary to an end. And I thought, I'd like to speak about it and share my views about it with all of you. I have read a couple of reviews on the documentary, which says that it's 8 hours too long, and it can get quite daunting and boring for a lot of fans. I can truly empathize with that, especially for a casual fan to see the Beatles basically rehearsing and basically, in an unfinished stage of songs and music, just chatting amongst each other, and sometimes the banter is completely aimless and pointless. A lot of irreverent humor, a lot of bickering and grudges and fighting. So I can imagine for a casual fan that can get a little boring and a bit of a drag. I fully get that. And for non-Beatle fans, they probably won't be watching the documentary in any case, so they're out of the equation. But when it comes to hardcore fans like me and millions of others, I'm sure, it is an absolute treasure trove. That footage being converted from 60 hours to 7.5, 8 hours is worth its weight in gold dust. It is brilliant. I mean, to see the four of them together in the studios, the genesis of each of those classic songs, their mindset, what they were going through at that time, their views, their arguing with one another, their fighting at times, their grudges, their jokes. It's just, as I said, it's a complete treat to watch the Beatles completely unarmed and so disarmingly honest. It's brilliant. It's absolutely brilliant. And as I had also said in my earlier episode, that through all of those varying emotions and different conflicts and whatever they were going through at that time, even despite all that, what comes across is the strong bond and the strong love they share for one another. Despite their differences at that time, despite all the negativity that was surrounding them, there was a very, very strong bond of love, which cannot be ignored, which cannot be discounted for. So that's what makes it so appealing and pleasing to Beatle fans like me. Episode 2 continues from where the first episode ended. The first one ended on a rather shocking note of George Harrison leaving, saying that he was fed up and he just couldn't continue with this anymore. And episode 2 begins with the Beatles shifting their venue from Twickenham to their own office at Apple, and the Apple studio, and Glyn Johns and his team put together equipment. Some of it got from EMI, and they set up a studio for the boys to record there. And there is definitely a change in mood. You can see them a lot happier. The place is more snug, and I think either Ringo or Paul, someone mentions that Twickenham was this large, empty, vast space, and it just didn't give a feeling of being able to do good music. So that's completely changed when they moved to Apple Studios, and the rehearsing continues, the banter continues. George comes back, which is brilliant, to see all four of them back again. And there are some really funny moments. There are moments of John Lennon, reading out a newspaper article on apparently how George Harrison might be arrested for some assault he did outside a nightclub. And you can see all four band members are, happy and laughing and joking about it. they also, read an article aloud, which actually says that they have broken up, and the infighting has become so much that they've actually come to blows with one another. And you can see the four of them, reacting to that piece of news with a lot of laughter and sarcasm, and John Lennon with his usual sharp wit. There's a brief section where Peter Sellers drops by, and you, it's quite funny that he's not in sync with the sense of humor of the four boys, and he's distinctly uncomfortable. And after some time, he says, "I think I'll leave." And there's this funny moment when he's leaving, and one of the roadies tell him that actually this is not the exit, you're going the other way, you need to go the other way. And it's quite hilarious, really. But it was great to see Peter Sellers drop in and chat with the boys. What really improves the recording session significantly is the arrival of Billy Preston. Now, Billy Preston was a great keyboard player who played along with Ray Charles. And there are moments in the documentary where the Beatles are praising him to the skies. In fact, George Harrison at one point of time says he's a better organ player than Ray Charles. Ray Charles stopped playing the organ when Billy was there, and he said, "Let him play it. He's that good." So you can clearly see that the Beatles have a lot of healthy respect for other musicians. Despite being, the musical geniuses that they were, they had a lot of respect for other musicians who they thought were great. There's a part, I think, in episode 1 where George Harrison speaks equally highly of Eric Clapton, and he says that I wish I could play like Clapton. I can never play like him. He's that good. And again, in the second episode, there is a part where John Lennon mentions the Fleetwood Mac, and he says, "Did you hear them on TV last night? They were brilliant. I think they're great." And he goes on to speak about the controlled tone of voice they have in their singing. And, so you can make out that there is so much of respect for all the music that is around them, and they're not in some ivory tower, cut off from the rest of the world, and they just think that we are the best and no one's to touch us. They have a lot of healthy respect for other musicians as well, which is so great to see. But as I was saying, the energy levels and the enthusiasm really kicks in when Billy Preston comes in the picture. And John makes it quite clear that Billy Preston will be credited in the record. He says that Billy Preston's going to play in the record. And, because we need a keyboard player. If one of us play the keyboard, we'll be a guitarist or a bass player short. So we do need someone who is a keyboard player. And that's how Billy Preston comes in. And his arrival completely changes the mood. The Beatles, when they were just the four of them with one another, they can be brutally honest and naked and, no holds barred. But you can see that the arrival of an outsider has made them change their behavior even with one another. The joking is there, the banter is there, everything is there, but it's a little more civil and it's a little more guarded. How they were completely unguarded with one another, that is not anymore present, and the focus is much more on the music. And it's brilliant. It's absolutely brilliant. They just, it's fascinating to watch the birth of all the classic songs that are so familiar with us now. So it's really great to watch. At one point of episode 2 also comes the arrival of Alan Klein. And it's very telling because, Alan Klein was the main reason for all those of you who have followed the Beatles' history. Alan Klein was managing the Rolling Stones, and he had a great desire to manage the Beatles. And when he comes to meet them and he meets them, after the meeting, Ringo Starr says that Alan Klein is a con, but good thing he's working for us. So you can already see the beginning of the end. The Beatles themselves know that Klein is really not a straightforward guy, and yet they've assigned him to be the manager, which would later on be the point of difference between Paul McCartney and the other three Beatles. Paul didn't want Alan Klein. The other three voted for him, and that's where the split happened. But so that's an important part in episode 2 when the introduction of Alan Klein is mentioned. And, the banter and the discussions continue on their live show on how they're going to end the documentary, how they're going to do the live show, where are they going to do it. Primrose Hill is considered as an option. Can they go there and do a concert? And eventually it comes down to the roof of the Apple building of their studio, the rooftop. And we see that John and Ringo, surprisingly, are both quite enthused about it, and they want to perform there. And Paul and George are not very sure. George sort of comes across as saying eventually that, okay, I'll do it wherever you guys want to do it. And Paul is like, let's not talk about it now. He tries to push it out of his thought process, and he doesn't want to think about it because he's clearly not comfortable doing it. And it amazes us that, someone of their musical proficiency and their desire to play live and, get back into the original rock and roll form of music without studio overdubs and without anything. Paul McCartney was one of the main guys going for it, which is why the entire album started. And he is now unsure. He is now not very comfortable about doing it. Anyway, that's where episode 2 ends. And the third episode begins with, it begins on such a sweet and charming section with Ringo Starr, in the process of composing Octopus's Garden, a song that wouldn't be included in the Get Back Get Back album, but would come in their last album, Abbey Road. But here we see him on the piano playing, one of the first versions, or the first time that he was playing Octopus's Garden, and he doesn't have it ready more than the first 2 lines. And George Harrison on guitar comes and helps him, and they try to work around a tune, and they sort of arrive at a tune. And since Ringo's on the piano and George is on the guitar, I think Ringo asked, I can't remember who asked, that who'll play the drums, and John Lennon walks in at that time and said, I'll do the drums. So it's great, it's great to see the Beatles bonding, and as I keep saying, that the love and the friendship keeps on getting reflected all the time, no matter what differences they have and they're going through at that time. Episode 3 also brings in the arrival of Heather McCartney. Now, Heather was Linda's child from her first marriage, her daughter from her first marriage, and Paul adopted her even before he and Linda got married. And so we see the little girl come in, and she also infuses a lot of childlike happiness and joy, and a lot of smile to the proceedings. And it's great to see Heather there. There's this funny part where Yoko Ono is she's doing her own thing of screaming and making weird sounds, and the camera goes on to Heather's expression, and she's like, what is this? She's like completely not impressed at all. And then there's a part where Heather comes on the mic and she tries to imitate Yoko, and she's screaming and this thing, and John goes, that's Yoko. So it's brilliant, these parts are brilliant. And the episode ends with them going on the rooftop and performing. And that's where Peter Jackson gets into fragmented territory, literally and figuratively. Because instead of just showing the concert as it is, he breaks up the screens in 3 parts, sometimes 4 parts, to show the band performing, to show the audience reaction down in the streets, to show the police not being very impressed with what's happening and coming into the office reception and asking them to turn down. So you see a lot of information happening at the same time. Now, in today's day and age where most people have large screen TVs, it may not be a problem watching it in that fragmented manner, but I can well understand a lot of people not liking it. I liked it. I didn't mind it at all because I was seeing John Lennon, Paul McCartney, and Ringo and George twice at times, two different camera angles. And I was also seeing the crowd audience, the crowd reaction. The people who were down below, some of them were thrilled that they were hearing the Beatles. And what was surprising was even some of the older people seemed to like the Beatles. The youngsters were all naturally very excited and happy that they were hearing the Beatles again. But what was surprising was that even a few oldies seemed to be positively inclined towards what was happening. And it was only that, couple of the elderly people said that this is a bit of an imposition and, you shouldn't be doing this in the middle of office hours and it's disturbing other people. And that's what the cops tell that's what the cops tell the Beatles staff, that, this has to stop because we've got about 30 complaints in the last half an hour. So, you need to stop. And it's, anyway, the concert goes on, as we know, as history tells us. And it's absolutely brilliant. It's, when the concert ends and the documentary, thereafter ends, it's such a mixed bag feeling because, we've watched history again, we've rewatched history, we've rewatched a time which was really set back 50 years ago, and it's come fresh and in its pristine glory in front of us all over again. But it was also a moment of sadness for someone like me because I feel this is really well and truly the end of the Beatles. Are we going to see anything else by them anymore? Because for all these years, the last thing that was left for us to see were the Get Back sessions, were Let It Be, were, could we see the rooftop concert officially once, the clear print and, the different takes and everything. And now that we have seen it, now that we have, well and truly experienced it, it sort of makes us realize that 51 years after the Beatles broke up, I think they have finally gone. I don't think we'll be seeing anything new from them. Yes, there can be documentaries, there can be, unless there is some hidden footage again we are not aware of, which we will see. I don't know, I'm keeping my fingers crossed. But other than that, I really don't see anything new coming from the Beatles now. Anyway, they've given us so much. They've given us so much of great music and love and friendship and a sense of belonging that, they will never go away. The Beatles will always remain. They will always be with us. And, God bless Peter Jackson and his team. And thank you, John Lennon, Paul McCartney, George Harrison, Ringo Starr, for giving us some great moments, some absolutely fabulous moments of happiness, joy, and laughter and hope. And it's just brilliant to have watched this entire documentary. And as I said, for hardcore fans like me, 8 hours is never too enough. The 8 hours means I can see the documentary thrice in a single day. I wouldn't mind doing that. Anyway, that's it from me. And, as Paul McCartney said, let it be, speaking words of wisdom, let it be. It's just been great watching the documentary, and it's been great talking about it as well. The Beatles Get Back, directed by Peter Jackson, is available on Disney Hotstar. You can see all the 3 episodes now. Take your time, listen to the Beatles records, and enjoy yourselves. That's it for now, and until the next time, bye-bye.